has been designed to expose and analyze the insidious interference of the tobacco industry in policy making, public health initiatives, and sustainable development agendas. By focusing on industry tactics and their implications for governance and public welfare, this seminar will equip the audience with critical insights and tools to identify and counteract tobacco industry interference. With this brief background, I would now request Dr. Wasim Iftikhar Janjua to start with an agenda-setting presentation for this discussion.
Thank you very much, Wasif, and thank you very much, everyone, for joining for today's seminar. This is a very important event for us, and we, in collaboration with Vital Strategies, we are holding this seminar to highlight the tobacco industrial interference in Pakistan. First of all, a disclaimer that I have no financial conflict of interest. We do not accept funding from tobacco companies or other commercial organizations whose interests are not aligned with improved public health. Just a few words regarding the instruments of tobacco control. First of all is WHO's Framework Convention in Tobacco Control, which is FCTC. Which came into force in 2005, and as of today, there are 183 parties to this. And I'm repeating these things for the benefit of all those who are joining us as students and as all those who are fresh learners in tobacco control. And we have almost 6 of them here in the hall, and they are working as interns with the STPI. This framework, it reaffirms health as a human right and promotes the highest standard of health, initiative, and cooperation. The convention lays down explicit steps for governments to address, control, and ultimately eliminate tobacco as endgame. Article 5.3 of the FCTC, it talks about the tobacco industry interference. And its first and the fundamental principle, it states that there is a fundamental and irreconcilable conflict between the tobacco industry's interest and public health policy interests. In setting and implementing their public health policies concerning tobacco control, parties shall act to protect their policies from commercial and other vested interests of tobacco industry as per the international and national laws. I'll briefly talk about Tobacco Industry Interference Index and its impact on Pakistan. As most of you are aware, that this is conducted every 2 years, and we are expecting to conduct. It is conducted by Southeast Asia Tobacco Control Alliance, that is SIATCA, and they score 20 indicators from 0 to 5. Tobacco Industry Interference Index from April 21 to March 23 was launched last year. And here I'll just talk about, I mean, this is the entire region, Ambro region, which is included in this, but I'll specifically talk about Pakistan. And as you can see that the scores are displayed like in the first set of indicators, Pakistan has 3, then 7. And overall, Pakistan has 53 score points, which is pretty low as compared to the other better performing countries in the region. Some of the findings from this tobacco industry interference is that tobacco industry tactics include influencing the policy through the national standardization bodies to gain a favorable environment. For example, they'll take the consumers or the shopkeepers or the unions along with them to pressurize the government to create the policies which are favorable to the tobacco industry. Pakistan has not explicitly banned CSR activities, whereas this is one of the vital requirements of FCTC, that all countries must ban tobacco industry CSR activities to prevent them from promoting their products through soft means. Tobacco industry enjoys many perks such as delayed implementation of the policies, tax exemptions, tax rebates on papers, and establishment of new factories. These are promoted all over the region, in fact, all over the globe, and Pakistan is no exception to that. Pakistan allows tobacco and electronic products to be imported by travelers and purchased at duty-free shops. And we have observed that duty-free shops all over the world, they have special kiosks and special shops which are selling all these products. Pakistan luckily has tobacco-free airports, and you will not find any tobacco products on Pakistani airports. All the document country officials remain engaged with the tobacco industry in multiple ways. That includes Pakistan as well. And as per Article 5.3, these interactions are supposed to be transparent and available to the public whenever it is requested. But generally, they are not. Pakistan does not have policies or procedures in place for interacting with the tobacco industry. Individuals and lobby groups funded by tobacco industry in Pakistan are also not registered. Whereas this is one of the major requirements of FCTC, that all those who are working for tobacco industry, they need to be registered. Pakistan deteriorated in its comparative score as compared to 2021. The score has gone down, and Pakistan has also started implementing Article 5.3 of WHO FCTC as of July 2024. Now I'll briefly talk about this tobacco harm reduction project, which was done by SDPI under the STOP, and we concluded this project in December of 2023. The aim of this project was to investigate and expose tobacco harm reduction narrative building in Pakistan by tobacco industry. The project envisaged investigating how the tobacco industry in Pakistan is spreading its tobacco harm reduction narrative using radio. So this is one of the innovative means of communication which was used in Pakistan, and SDPI actually exposed this practice. The project examined 24 radio programs aired on Radio Pakistan, which is a state-owned entity and is not supposed to be used by tobacco industry, by a tobacco industry affiliate alternative research initiative located in Islamabad. The strategies for this project were that we had to investigate tobacco industry narrative building, then packaging the findings and recommendations in a report and paper. Communication and dissemination was supposed to be done through social media advocacy, in person, email communication with all stakeholders, and with the Ministry of Health and Pakistan Broadcasting Corporation, which is the parent organization of Radio Pakistan. Acting by mobilizing the partners, stakeholders, by disseminating report, paper, creating national and international impact. Sustainability in this project was achieved by strengthening existing national tobacco control efforts and WHO FCTC treaty obligations. A very brief overview of the project. The total of almost 20 hours of radio programming was taken into account for this project. All the programs which were aired in Urdu, they were transcribed by the project team. Then they were translated into English, and validation and internal accuracy was, internal consistency was then conducted, and the project culminated with the writing of the report. The context of this project is that tobacco industry uses AustroTurf front groups and third parties to greenwash its practices for strategic planning and to undermine and pollute the scientific knowledge which is being produced by tobacco control efforts. Here is one of the maps of the tobacco industry affiliates and front groups which are operating in Pakistan. Very briefly, I'll just mention that all those organizations which are mentioned in, which are shown in yellow color, they are working for Philip Morris in Pakistan, and all those which have been shown in red color, they are working for British American Tobacco, which is also a parent organization of Pakistan Tobacco Company. And the green boxes, they actually show the thematic areas on which all these organizations are working. Although this was not part of the deliverables of the project, but this was an important step which was conducted under this project, and we were able to map all those organizations which are operating in Pakistan. Deliverables included communication with the Ministry of Health and Pakistan Broadcasting Corporation, multiple face-to-face and email and in writing communications were held between the Ministry of Health, SDPI, Ministry of Health, and then Ministry of Health also wrote multiple letters to Pakistan Broadcasting Corporation. Industrial influence inside the government offices was also highlighted with our meetings with the Ministry of Health, and we very vocally watched it, and we also talked about it. There were 6 op-eds which were published related to this project. There was a domestic dissemination of the project findings and recommendations, and at international level, the findings of this report, they were published, they were presented at University of Bath in Kuwait conference recently in the month of November, and in Jordan, that was yesterday. Radio programs to counter the counter narrative, to create a counter narrative against the tobacco industry were also conducted. There were 4 radio programs which were conducted by SDPI to counter their narrative. Domestic and international networking was one of the finest outcomes of this, and we were able to collaborate with many international partners as well as nationally to showcase our work and to benefit from their experiences. Twitter, Facebook, and other social media platforms were also used extensively. Some of the activities which were beyond the scope of this project, but they were conducted by SDPI, is capacity building of the government officials and legislators on their request. We also made TIMRA presentation, that is Tobacco Industry Monitoring Research and Analysis course, which was attended by the team from SDPI, and presentations were made during that course. Tobacco Industry Interference Report launch was also, this report was presented at Tobacco Industry Interference Report launch in Pakistan. Publications in peer-reviewed journals in collaboration with University of Bath, they are underway, and more effective and sustainable response was observed, and the result we have seen in case of the kiddie packs, which were recently prevented from getting manufactured in Pakistan, violating another SRO and getting exported to Sudan. And this was also done by civil society organizations with the vital role played by Vital Strategies as well as Sustainable Development Policy Institute. Comprehensive mapping of the tobacco industry affiliates, front groups, you have already witnessed this. We also found a very interesting aspect that tobacco industry purposefully creates or engages certain organizations for a very short time, and then they get the things done or whatever they have to create, and then those organizations are no more visible. There was a ban on nicotine products and electronic devices in one of the provinces, and that is with the help of our partners from KP. Blue Veins, they were instrumental in doing this, and this ban effectively continues even today. There was a reiteration of the FCTC obligation and laws in Pakistan. Implementation of Article 5.3 by the government, and its reiteration was done this July. Collaborators' voices against the tobacco industry were raised by the partners in Pakistan, and SDPI provided excessive technical support to other CSOs and to the government on this aspect. We were also able to initiate studies on nicotine products, and which are ongoing, and we'll be happy to share the results very shortly. Global networking and support was forthcoming, and we were able to curtail future interference by the industry. And again, I would like to mention the case of kiddie packs. The government also realized that they are being watched, or they are being observed. Here are some of the glimpses of the report, and I've shared this in the hall as well for the consumption of the audience, and if anyone is willing, I can share them this report online as well. Just how we should operate in case of our tobacco industry, observing tobacco industry interferences, that we observe, we find a violation, we expose that violation, we follow up on that, and we recycle this entire process. And thank you so very much. And I'll be glad to answer any questions if someone has it during the question and answer session.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wasim, for setting the stage. And at the very beginning, I should apologize because of 10 minutes delay caused, and we have Tracy Johnston and Dr. Sophie joined online. I just wanted to dwell upon a couple of questions, including that how interference exacerbates vulnerabilities in governance and public health systems. The second question is that what techniques are used for tracking industry interference, including transparency initiatives? And the third one is that what steps are there to adopt FCTC Article 5.3 in order to protect policies from industry influence? And before going towards Dr. Minhaj, who has kindly joined us for, enlightening us with his knowledge, I would request Dr. Sophie Brasnell to please give her a point of view. Dr. Sophie, can you hear us?
I can, yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Hi. Yes, thank you so much for having me in this discussion. Thank you, Wasim, for that great presentation. We recently got into the thick of it with the tobacco industry and their influence over science and policy in our most recent investigation into Philip Morris Japan. And what that really highlights to us, I know Tracy is going to present a bit more detail on that in a moment, but in regards to the issues around tobacco industry interference and where we are in tobacco control, I think it highlights how we've made significant progress, but we are still at the mercy in many countries of the tobacco industry and their attempts to influence. And they're not always obvious. You know, we see examples where it might just be the case of the industry sending what seem to be innocuous emails to scientific academics or to policymakers or regulators that seem completely mundane, but it's still an attempt to influence. That's the whole point of them doing it. Otherwise, they wouldn't. And it's really important that we continue to identify all instances of tobacco industry interference, no matter how small they are, so that we can better identify solutions in tackling tobacco industry interference.
Great. So with this, I would now request Ms. Tracy, if we have joined by Ms. Tracy. So if you can also shed some light on industrial interference, please.
Thank you very much once again to Dr. Wasim on that great presentation and the fantastic project that was undertaken in Pakistan. If I could take just a quick step back, I think, you know, what we know is that there have been surveys where the WHO has gone to governments and asked them, you know, what is preventing you from implementing public health policies to reduce tobacco use? And the vast majority of those responses, countries are saying it's tobacco industry interference. The tobacco industry is a barrier to progress. It's our main barrier to progress. And so I'm speaking from STOP. STOP is a global network of public health organizations and academics. And we're really looking to monitor and expose the industry's tactics that are preventing progress. And I'm part of the Vital Strategies team at STOP, and my colleague Sophie, who you've heard from, is with the University of Bath. And so we seek to undertake that in a number of different ways. But I think for the purposes of this meeting, what might be helpful is to refer to one of our earliest outputs, which was a report called Crooked 9. And what we did is we examined the most common tactics the industry uses globally, because what you've heard from Dr. Wasim, a lot of that is repeated right around the world. What we find is the industry is both quite innovative in what it does, but also whenever it finds a tactic that works, it will roll it out in other countries. They will produce what we call a playbook and roll it out in other countries. And so we see a lot of those same tactics that you've seen in Pakistan. We see them setting up alliances and front groups. And in recent years, that has included an organisation that Philip Morris set up with its funding called the Foundation for a Smoke-Free World. That's now called Global Action to End Smoking. They tried to rename themselves as a kind of like reputational thing because they were getting so much pushback from the public health community. But we also have seen that over many, many decades from things like farmers groups or retailers groups. The industry is always looking for other people to carry its messages and its points of view. We also see attempts to weaken the public health community. And that can be anything from submitting freedom of information requests to Department of Health, for example, that slow up the wheels of progress, through to what we've seen in recent years about really trying to divide the public health community on issues like e-cigarettes, heated tobacco products, nicotine pouches, and so on. We also see that they're still disputing health policy. Things that we now take for granted, like the harms of secondhand smoke, we still get industry representatives and people linked to industry who are disputing things like the harm of secondhand smoke. And again, we move that forward. We see a dispute about the harms of e-cigarettes, heated tobacco products, and so on. Then, as Sophie was talking about, the amount of misleading research and promotion of misleading research really has accelerated quite rapidly, both through the major transnational tobacco companies funding their own research internally and also funding external researchers. And what the Philip Morris Japan expose really brought to light was the extent of research that may be being funded covertly. And so for that particular issue of heated tobacco products, we really don't know how much research there is available that is truly independent. And that's a massive problem whenever policymakers are making public health decisions, really important life-saving decisions that should be based on good, independent science. We also see misleading research on topics like illicit trade. And again, all of this is to help the industry get what it wants, which is a lack of regulation so that it can sell as many products to as many people as possible. We also see a lot of lobbying. Now that we can find that out through things like transparency registrars in some countries. But we also know that there is a lot of lobbying going on behind the scenes that we don't see. And we can look at Europe for this. For example, in the European Union, all lobbying is supposed to be very transparent. But a group called ACT in France recently conducted a freedom of information request from the European Commission, asking if there were meetings, etc., with the tobacco industry. And the cache of documents that was released just from one directorate, that was DG Trade, showed that there had been ongoing emails, meetings, requests for the European Commission to act on behalf of tobacco companies. And so we only find out about these things if we're told about them or through freedom of information requests. So transparency so that we know about these tactics is really, really important. We also see the industry trying to influence politics at the national and also the international level. So that could be at the national level going to the Prime Minister or the President's Department or the Department of Trade and promising investment. If only regulations were more lax, or if only you could permit this product, then we could invest in your country. And, if countries want to pursue economic growth, that can be a very appealing argument, but it sidesteps the costs of tobacco, which, as we know, are really massive, not just in terms of health, but also economically and socially. We also have litigation, and that's a threat that can be really impactful when the industry pursues litigation to stop a public health policy. In one country, it can have a chill effect on others adopting that policy. And we saw that, for example, whenever Australia moved to implement plain packs. And that had a bit of a chill effect then on other countries following suit. But ultimately, Australia's victory in that ultimately led to other countries then knowing that they could pursue that policy. And that's something that we're seeing being rolled out across more countries across the globe. Then we also see the industry facilitating smuggling. Whenever we first published our Crooked 9 report, and I'll put a link to that in the chat, it was estimated that about 58% of the illicit cigarette market was the industry's own product. And yet it points to other players as being the main problem with illicit. And it will argue, as it has done in Pakistan, that government should not raise tobacco taxes because it exacerbates illicit. Well, that does not account for its own role in this problem, its lack of control over its own supply systems, and in some cases, the tactics that it pursues to make cigarettes cheaper and to make cheap cigarettes available. Things like oversupplying in one country, so that oversupply then ends up in a neighboring country. We see all of these tactics playing out globally. And then something the industry is plowing a lot of money into is seeking to restore and enhance its reputation. So tobacco companies will engage in CSR, again, whenever countries desperately need help, in the face of natural disasters, in the face of epidemics like COVID. It can be very appealing for governments to take that assistance, but they're doing it for their own ends. It's not out of goodness. It's out of a hard commercial sense that they want their vested interests to be supported. And also we see things like the tobacco industry trying to claim that it's transforming. We see tobacco companies investing in health and pharmaceutical and wellness companies, for example, with PMI's acquisition of Vectura. Number one, they're hoping that gets them a seat at the policy table, that they can portray themselves as health companies, not companies that sell deadly products that kill 8 million people a year. But the public health community, I think, in the issue of Vectura, that's a real win, because the public health community globally came together to really reject that, to show that Vectura employees would be considered as part of the tobacco industry after this acquisition. And so Philip Morris has now disposed of the Vectura business. So we see these tactics, we see them globally. And we also see the industry taking wins or taking things that have happened in one country and going to governments in other countries and saying, well, look, this government has found that acceptable. If we think about the e-cigarette policy in the United Kingdom, for example, or the policies for nicotine pouches in Sweden, or the policies in support of heated tobacco products in Japan, the tobacco industry will go to different governments. And if they want to, for that one of those products to be allowed to be sold in that market, they'll say, well, this country, it's been a great success. Look at the evidence. And of course, the evidence typically is biased. But they will try and use that to persuade other governments. So that's a wide range of the tactics that we see globally rolled out from country to country. But I would say that, it is important to monitor what the industry is doing. It is important to expose what the industry is doing. And it's really important for health advocates, for the tobacco control community, for media to share that information, because people aren't aware of how pernicious the industry is, of the tactics that it's using to get what it wants. And what it wants is not beneficial. It's harmful. And we need to be protecting people from the industry, and we need to be helping governments protect policy from the industry. So that really is why, we feel that our mission is so important. And also the work that you've been doing in Pakistan is so important as well. I would also talk about one other win and touching upon the project in Philip Morris Japan that Sophie referred to. That's an example of where we expose something that happened and it's useful in another country. So last week, Vietnam voted to ban e-cigarettes and heated tobacco products. And one of the things that they were particularly worried about was conflicts of interest and bias in the evidence. And so Philip Morris was, as we understand it, lobbying quite heavily for heated tobacco products to be exempted from that ban. And this Philip Morris Japan expose then was discussed in Vietnam. And so there were questions raised about, can we trust Philip Morris? Can we trust the science on these products? What are the biases of the people who are making representations to us on these products? And we hope that helped Vietnam take the decision it did last week, because that information was available to policymakers, to the media, and to the public. So I hope that's helpful. Please let me know if you've got any questions.
Of course, it was. Thank you very much, Ms. Tracy Johnston, for explaining explicitly, and you highlighted the tobacco industry tactics, including the lobbying factor and the covertly funding. And you also talked about misleading research, which was also highlighted by Ms. Sophie, and then the emails to European Commission for helping the industry. And thank you for sharing again the alarming figure of 58% of the illicit trade, which is also which is tobacco industry's own products. And you also talked about the tobacco industry investing in health companies and the pharma industry. With this, I would now request Dr. Minhajus Siraj, who is the CEO of Syndicate Health currently, and he has also served with the government of Pakistan for a longer period of time, and he has been heading the tobacco control cell, and he was the Director General there. With this brief introduction, I would request Dr. Minhaj Siraj to please take over the stage.
Thank you very much, Vasif. Thank you, SDPI, for having me here. This afternoon, it's very heartening and delightful to listen to at least Ms. Johnston. I'm amazed that how much detailed insight the lady has into the dynamics of tobacco control of our country. And that reminds me also when she was talking about the illicit tobacco trade. The first insight into the tactics or the interferences done by the tobacco was when I was informed that the newspapers carrying ads from the Federal Board of Revenue to stop illicit or smuggled cigarettes from coming into the country and their sale, with a message that these are the illegal brands being carried out in the ministry, in the country. And if you see these brands, you should inform our regulatory people or the customs intelligence wing. To my astonishment, the first time was that the cost of that ad, a quarter-pager ad in a national daily, it costs about almost ₹500,000 to put the ad there of this size. It was paid by one of the major leading tobacco industry of the country. So, you see, never take these things on the face value. I always share with my colleagues that when we are talking about our fight against tobacco in the public health domains, it is a totally different ballgame from fighting any other disease or illness. When we are talking about public health issues, even the COVID thing, which was such a major disaster for the whole universe, those attacking organisms or the culprits, they were never seen by the naked eye. And here we have corporate giants which are hitting back on us if we are trying to control them or to take our public health priorities on them. So whatever they bring to the face of the people to allure their clients or whatever they do, we should not a single time we should take all these activities on their face value. So many things, and I will just explain why that activity was going on, why the tobacco industry itself was paying for the messages conveyed by the customs intelligence that illicit tobacco trade should be banned in Pakistan. In our country, there are two major players in the tobacco field, and rest of the industry, which includes our legally manufacturing industry and the illegal manufacturing industry, plus the smuggled ones, whichever comes in the definition of illicit tobacco trade. That major players, they control about 78% of our market of the tobacco products. The other rest of them controlling about 20 to 22%. They help the two major players, they try to help the customs intelligence or our government agencies to wipe out that portion, which is capturing the other 20% of the market. So the 100% market share is controlled by these two players. And that's why उनके लिए 5 लाख रुपए का इश्तिहार लगा देना आपकी तरफ से कोई बड़ी बात नहीं. Starting with that, when we are talking about Article 5.3, the tobacco industry always tries to influence the government policies, and उसमें सबसे जो major उनका role रहा है अब तक, वो that was into, and that is universal, that is not only confined to Pakistan. They drag the government into lengthy litigations. And when we were having, after devolution, the federal government was, the health sector was confined to the provinces and the federal government had no major role. They always tried to launch a court case in the province of Sindh High Court, realizing that the government officers from Islamabad will not be able to travel to Sindh High Court every month and contest those cases. So they will try to seek relief on different grounds and linger on the cases and all those things. That is also one of the things which the government had to take care of that. Then, yes, the tobacco mafia or the big tobacco, they have the power to buy the governments, not only individuals. As I am no more in the government service, I will be very candid to share with you that one of our sitting minister, the sunglasses she is wearing costing each 250,000 rupees minimum. The cost was paid by the tobacco industry. So how can you think of taking the government initiative to the next level or making a good control out of your efforts? So that's how they play. And yes, Ms. Tracy also mentioned about illicit tobacco trade and the influence of the tobacco industry on the European Union. And I will share another incidents when we were drafting this protocols for WHO on illicit tobacco trade. Tobacco industry tried to influence those drafts through the European Union representatives at the FCTC Secretariat. And the major article which they were trying to push was controlling the transit trade of tobacco products on the transit routes of the country. Pakistan objected to that because the transit route of Pakistan is larger than probably the whole of the European Union countries' transit routes. What they were trying to get introduced into those articles was that if a container or a supply of some goods lands at a city's country's some port, maybe airport or a seaport, and it is intended for another country, it has to pass through that only through the transit route. That government of the host country should not be touching that goods. If they are declared illicit tobacco, like Karachi पे कंटेनर जहाज से उतरा है जी, इसमें तो जा रहा है ये सेंट्रल एशिया एंड इट इज टोबैको इसके अंदर है, तो पाकिस्तान गवर्नमेंट इसको हाथ ना लगे. Let it pass through Torkham, go to Central Asia. The destination country है, only their laws should apply to that. पाकिस्तान का स्टैंस ये था कि if that container contains nukes, if that container contains arms, even if that container has human trafficking, मतलब उसके अंदर हो रही, and out of हमारा जो 1400 किलोमीटर का जो ट्रांजिट रूट है, स्टार्टिंग फ्रॉम कराची टू तोरखम या अब ग्वादर से तो तोरखम या चाइना, आप वो कंटेनर जो है वो आपकी कंट्री से पूरे गुजरता जाए एंड आप सिर्फ उसको बैठ के देखते रहे कि जी ये जा रहा है उज्बेकिस्तान जा रहा है या कहीं और जा रहा है, तो वो ही जाके इसको जा रहा है. सो अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह पाकिस्तान वाज एबल टू crush that European Union proposal. And I can share with you that I had to abuse them in Punjabi. I was there. And it's on the record of FFCT. It was such a heated discussion, but that proposal was dropped. Tobacco industry, क्या करें? टेरर फाइनेंसिंग और इन चीजों के साथ इन्वॉल्वमेंट उनकी है और वो इस तरह की एक्टिविटीज करते हैं. They're just trying to give you a glimpse of how they work. I'm sure it will be a news for tracing also. So, anyhow, basically, जब आपको काउंटर करना है टोबैको इंडस्ट्री को, तो just keep it in mind that it's a continuously evolving fight. It is not a matter of one day. Today's strategy will be redundant tomorrow because they will always be looking for some things to do. Government allowed them to place a poster of A4 size on their sale points. Next morning, all the sale points had 100 posters of A4 because the government स्किप हो गया कि आपने तादाद मेंशन नहीं की कि आपने एक ही पोस्टर लगाना है, सिर्फ ये कह दिया कि पोस्टर जो लगेगा आपका ऐड का वो A4 साइज का होगा. अगले दिन उन्होंने 100 A4 के पोस्टर लगा दिए. सो दिस हैज टू बी वेरी मच लाइक, अब जो सबसे ज्यादा जो जिस चीज पे वो करते हैं रिलाय, दैट इज देयर एडवर्टाइजमेंट्स, क्योंकि बड़ी लिमिटेड गवर्नमेंट ने कर दी. पैक सिगरेट का जो है दैट इज देयर मैक्सिमम है, उस पर भी अब तस्वीरें कैंसर की एंड ऑल दोस. देन पॉइंट ऑफ सेल की जो एड बैन जो हुआ, एंड वासिफ नोज, खुरम नोज, दैट SRO वाज अप्रूव्ड बाय द कैबिनेट कमेटी ऑन लेजिस्लेटिव बिजनेस CCLC जो है, ऑन अ न्यू ईयर नाइट एट 11:20 PM. Thanks to the law minister of that time that he was kind enough to listen to us. We have to do it tonight. And जब भी time मिला उसको, so that New Year night पर tobacco industry was sleeping or maybe celebrating something else, but the government was there to enact that. Otherwise, उनको पता चल जाता तो ये कभी भी ना हो. Implementation अभी भी उसकी जाहिर है, it is not being done properly in its letter and spirit जो हुआ था, but the law is there. I'll share one example with you how things are patchy, especially for our colleagues कि अब इस फील्ड में इन चीजों को देखना चाह रहे हैं. Aside from tobacco control, I will give you one example. I was in the management of Pakistan Institute of Medical Sciences, PIMS Hospital. And every time when we were presenting our data to the people who try to visit us or delegation aa gaya, the best thing which we were portraying was that we are catering for 2,000 plus emergencies in the hospital every day. दुनिया के किसी हॉस्पिटल में 2,000-2,500 इमरजेंसी डेली नहीं हो. One fine day, I presented it to a delegation. In the evening, I just started wondering why we are having so much numbers and what are we doing with it. It came in mind, maybe when I started looking for the data on my own, I realized there's a surge of patients between 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Evening वाला जो है सेशन उसमें एकदम से पेशेंट्स बहुत ज्यादा एंटर हो जाते. We are mostly government servants. When we are off from the duty, we go and bring our family to the hospital in the evening. OPD नहीं है तो चले emergency में आ गए. But when I physically started inspecting that, it was a routine of patients. जो बाकी सारे 24 घंटे में चल रहा है वही टाइम इसमें भी चल रहा है physically. There was nothing. Entries were showing कि जी 300-400 मरीज एकदम इस दौरान में extra. Fifth day, I realized what was wrong. And you will be astonished. There are so many private laboratories around the hospital. They had employed our students of medical technology as their technicians. Those technicians were taking the blood samples and urine samples and other tests from the patients on their private labs. They're bringing those samples to the hospital, getting that person's name registered in the casualty, because casualty में सारे test free हैं. They send it to our lab. वहां से reports ली 6 बजे, जाके अपनी clinic से जाके वहां से उनको type करके दे. So I had to expel 11 students of my College of Medical Technology and those things. But see, everybody in the world, even आज चले गए आप, आज भी आप डायरेक्टर वहां का आपको बता 2,500 मरीज रोज कौन से रहेगा. Just टाइम आपका मैंने लिया, लेकिन just trying to आपको शेयर करना कि things at the face value, especially when we are confronting this tobacco industry. Cause their finance efforts. So basically, when we are trying to make policies, उसमें भी आप लोगों की बहुत ज़्यादा जरूरत है. Indigenous data of this country, tobacco control dynamics is very limited. Whatsoever is coming, and I'm thankful to the SDP that they have taken the leads in so many issues. Next, also, they have an example for others to follow. And others, they are now trying to bring up proper data, which is enabling the policymakers to make some good decisions based on our own facts. इससे पहले डाटा था वो इंटरनेशनल डाटा पे हम सारा रिलाई कर रहे थे या WHO का डाटा. बट उससे एक सर्वे हुआ और वो सर्वे कब रिपीट हुआ? Believe me, the very first interaction interaction with the tobacco control. I was pushed accidentally into the tobacco cell. So, but the first presentation was given to me. उस वक्त हमारा कितना था जी, हम कितने मरीज आते हैं 274. I directly remember that time it was the 274 people dying every day from the use of tobacco products. And how many children start smoking every day? 500. So you see, हम दुनिया को ये पढ़ा रहे थे गवर्नमेंट वाले, आपकी बॉडी बात आज भी लोग बात करते हैं जी 1200 बच्चे रोज शुरू कर देते कस्टमर dying people 300, less than 300 new. So tobacco industry is multiplying 3 times every day. नया ये क्या है? I myself have said, this is nonsense. ये डाटा आपको जो हम देते हैं, आपको इसको आंखें बंद करके इस बार ना करें. मतलब पहले दिन मैंने शोर मचा दिया, मैंने कहा ये क्या मुझे आप पढ़ा रहे हो? टैबैको इंडस्ट्री अगर इस तरह का मतलब कर रही है कि उनको 274 बंदों को मार रही है और उनको रिप्लेसमेंट स्मोकर 1200 वो डेली के ले रही है, तो ये क्या? बेसिकली वो चीज है कि जब आप रिसर्च भी कर रहे हैं और जब चीजों को क्रिटिकली देख रहे हैं, साइंटिफिकली देख रहे हैं, तो आपको अपने डाटा को जो है वो प्रॉपर रखना है ताकि यू शुड बी कमिंग अप विद अ प्रॉपर सॉलिड बेस. इसके ऊपर कुछ वो चाहे वो गवर्नमेंट करे चाहे सिविल सोसाइटी करे, कुछ भी करे, इम्पैक्ट होता है, हर जगह होता है. Many a times we have ourselves in the we have hidden ourselves behind the right, just to get the things going. The best was जो सुप्रीम कोर्ट का केस था जो टोबैको एपिडेमिक के खिलाफ, जिसमें शीशा हुआ. फ्रंट पे हम सिविल सोसाइटी को लाए बिकॉज टोबैको इंडस्ट्री ने क्या किया था कि वन ऑफ द वेरी सीनियर लॉयर एंड अ वेरी सीनियर पॉलिटिशियन, उसको सुप्रीम कोर्ट के सामने कर दिया ला के, एंड व्हाट ही वाज रिप्रेजेंटिंग शीशा स्मोकर्स एसोसिएशन ऑफ. सो वी स्विच्ड ओवर. डिस्कशन टोबैको इंडस्ट्री ने क्रिएट की, बट वी सर्कमवेंटेड इट टू आवर बेनिफिट. हमने एनजीओ को खड़ा करके कैबिनेट सुप्रीम कोर्ट के सामने रख दिया कि शीशा तो बंद करो ना, पहले टोबैको को बाद में देखो. जो एक ईवल से तो जान छूट रही है. एमरो रीजन में पाकिस्तान में था फर्स्ट वन टू बैन शीशा, और वो फिर बात होते भारत की उल्टी हो गई. तो मतलब ठीक बेसिक जो आपके टेक होम मैसेज है कि यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड व्हाट द गवर्नमेंट पॉलिसीज, उनका वर्किंग, उनकी चीजें, तब आप जाके इनको आप डायरेक्टली कन्फ्रंट कर सकते हैं. जरा सा भी आपका वीक है, जरा सी भी आपने लूज चीज खेली, कि आपका जो कॉन्फ्रेंस थी आपके एक्स I was not happy with that, but the thing is कि when जब टैक्सेशन पे बात हुई थी, we have been trying to make the politician understand कि हमारा जो फाइनेंशियल डिसिप्लिन है उसमें टैक्सेशन का प्रोसेस क्या है. और इवन पब्लिक को भी आइडिया नहीं. जाहिर है जब आप तक उनके वर्किंग को आप नहीं समझते, आपको टोबैको टैक्सेशन के अंदर एक्साइज ड्यूटी और बाकी जो चीजें उनका भी डिफरेंस समझ नहीं आता. आपको ये नहीं पता चलता कि अगर आपने टैक्स ले लिया टोबैको इंडस्ट्री से, आप उसका करेंगे. यू हैड नो प्रपोजल. वो सारी चीजें हाइप क्रिएट हुई बहुत ज्यादा कुछ दिनों के लिए पॉलिटिकली, बट इवेंचुअली इट वाज नथिंग. share करें फिर then
Thank you very much, Dr. Minhaj. It has always been a treat to hear to you. Before going to Khurram Hashmi Saab for his closing remarks, I would request if Ms. Sania could add some local
Sophie and Dr. Min have already discussed everything and quite in detail. I just wanted to add a few things on local level, that what kind of interference, like when we speak about interference on local level, what kind of interference are we speaking about? First of all, the CSR, corporate social responsibility initiatives by the tobacco industry. Obviously, CSR is completely legal in Pakistan, which is a good thing, of course. But when it comes to tobacco industry, we believe, tobacco control advocates believe, that it is kind of a hypocrisy, you know, and on one hand, you're killing 274 people every day and addicting 1,200 new children, not even like older people, adults, children from the age of 14, 13, 14. And meanwhile, conducting CSR activities such as plantation drives or training programs for tobacco farmer children. It's kind of odd, and it kind of seems a bit funny. Then the TAPS violation, like TAPS, meaning tobacco advertising, promotion, and sponsorship violations. Of course, it's tobacco industry is not supposed to advertise, promote, or sponsor events anywhere or festivities anywhere. But because of social media, this law is violated on huge level. We've seen Velo soundstage online, really amazing and really good celebrities on there singing. Of course, the celebrities are like really good, but like what they're doing and for what kind of company they're doing, that is something that acknowledging different kinds of products, especially the nicotine pouches or the vapes or e-cigarettes, HTPs, and also the kind of advertising that we see on social media is very misleading and misinforming people. Looking at some advertisement a few weeks ago, where they were promoting this one pouch, nicotine pouch, and like a brighter smile. So things like that. Vasim is smiling. Yeah, that's not it's not true in itself, is not a very and in an amount that they put in within those also tobacco industry, and this is like we don't even see these there are different parties, and by I mean like social events that tobacco industry sponsors, which we don't even see mostly on social media. Those are very lit parties, and they're endorsed and attended by celebrities, by politicians, by famous people, by rich people, the millionaires of Pakistan. And that kind of obviously adds to the sensation. And a company, organization, anyone who's organizing or sponsoring it, you would think that they are important. That's like a normal human psyche. Of course, during COVID time, I'm not sure if we remember now that there were rumors get COVID. That was a very popular rumor at that time, and I think I hope not, but I think people even started to start smoking as well during that time, whereas that's totally that's totally pathetic and very sample promotional discounts on cigarette packs or vapes or e-cigarettes. Buy one get one, both of them getting each of the vape or e-cigarettes. So these are the kind of interferences that we've seen within the country. But there are certain mechanisms that we have in place within the country as well. Organizations like and CTC, they're working to expose tobacco industry and how they're interfering and lobbying to violate the policies that we have out there to protect public health. And this research that SDPI has conducted last year. Independence. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sania, for adding value to the discussion. Now I would request Mr. Khurram Hashmi for a vote of thanks, but I would also like him to answer a couple of questions which we have received on that we have already regularized tobacco industry and taxed them, but eventually we flooded the market, smuggled cigarettes. This is the first question, and the second one is that why can't we tax those who sell these smuggled cigarettes and their suppliers as well? So with this, I hand over the mic to you.
Thank you very much. These questions are for the larger audience rather than directed towards me. I can start with this point that there are laws, there are legislation. Are challenges posed by the tobacco industry when it comes to flooding the market with these kind of products or already under-resourced by the authorities, including the FBR. But then again, there have been certain measures taken by the FBR in recent times, by the government in recent times. Despite the fact, considering that if these efforts are not there, the challenge of smuggled products, including the cigarettes, might have been involved in this country. And this is where, again, we can seek the guidance and wisdom from the Raj on how the historically these things have coincided. Yet, tobacco industry have remained very much aggressive about these things. So this is one thing. Sir, do you like to further respond? It's directed towards you, sir. Then I can conclude with the vote of thanks.
C also has pointed towards this. I mean, not this question, this issue earlier that 58% of market cigarettes in the market are produced by the tobacco industry itself. But I would like Dr. Minhaj to shed some light on it with his experience.
When we talk about tobacco taxation, then yes, we have to taxes from the industry, which is always a uphill task. Taxes from all other corporations in the market, that how to evade taxes. And that phenomenon is also universal. That is not only confined to Pakistan or FBR here. But then saying yes, that increasing tobacco taxes throughout the world, it has been proven that it does not encourage smuggled cigarettes into the market. Some of the smuggled cigarettes which come into the market, you will see when we talk about not only, but when we talk about illicit tobacco in the country, it has one dimension, that is locally produced and tax evaded products. How these tobacco industry giants, they do front their stores, and वो जो previous जब टैक्स बढ़ जाता है तो उन्होंने मैन्युफैक्चरिंग जो पहले का जो टैक्स था उसी की स्टैंप्स लगा के वो लोअर रेट के मार्केट में उसको फ्लड कर देते हैं. So there are so many ways to evade tax. Then after that, the comes which is illegally brought into the country. without paying any taxes of import or revenue. The revenue which is generated from the tobacco industry is never equaling the cost of, you can say, the health cost of the people who are using these products. It is maybe a cost which recently we have been able to do some studies. And although we started, the government started its tobacco control efforts way of almost 20 years back. Only 2 or 3 years have passed that we have been able to get some insight into the health costs our people are paying for getting rid of the tobacco related diseases. So it has to match somewhere. And the people who have mostly in the low socioeconomic which is the maximum load of our population. And when they are being products to use these products for their own, you can say that ease of their mind and their tranquility and getting away from their risk. So, but also buying the disease is that has to be balanced somewhere. The Ministry of Health and other stakeholders should be more, let's say, proactive towards creating enabling environment for the tobacco control.
Dr. Wasim, you want to add something?
Yes, very brief. Health costs which calculated for Pakistan directly attributable to tobacco is 715 billion rupees. And please be informed that tobacco industry paid 205 billion in taxes last year, and this year it is expected that they will pay 300 billion, which is less than half of what the health cost of Pakistan is. Second thing is a study. In fact, she mentioned that there was a study which argued that smokers will have less impact of tobacco. If they are smokers, they'll have less impact of COVID. And that study was published by a European Journal of Respiratory Diseases. But later on, this was retracted by the editors, and they mentioned it very clearly on that article that this article is unsubstantiated and has no basis of for publication. And Dr. Minhaj has very rightly pointed out that tobacco taxation is one of the most effective ways of reducing the tobacco consumption anywhere in the world, and it has been proven over and over again by multiple studies. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Dr. Wasim, and I'm afraid that I will not be able to take more questions because of the format of today's discussion. And if anyone has a question, you can ask bilaterally after this, closing session. And because we have online speakers from UK, Ms. Tracy and Ms. Sophie. So looking at the sensitivity of time, I would request Mr. Khurram Hashmi to please close the discussion formally.
Thank you very much. It has been evident that the tobacco industry interference remains a critical issue, but on the positive side, we have seen that there are very significant resistance going on in order to protect the health. And for that, we are thankful for SDPI and our experts over here for keeping this issue alive, being discussed frequently, being brought it forward for the consideration of the larger interest of the stakeholders. So let's hope that we are going to advocate for the stronger policies, including the enforcement for keeping the tobacco industry accountable. And this is very, very critical to highlight these shenanigans by the tobacco industry. And we appreciate SDPI experts, the participants, and especially our online guests that have joined on this topic. And we hope these sessions will be continued in future and carried on. So thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Khurram Hashmi, Dr. Minhaj Siraj, Dr. Wasim, Ms. Sania, Ms. Tracy, Ms. Sophie, and those researchers who have joined us from NUST. the colleagues who have joined from Summer and STPI colleagues and all others who have joined us today. Thanks once again. Have a nice day.